be done there. The second element was sort of a review of regulatory approaches with the potential for an office of water innovations. This was a national report, so they were talking about for all the states. I don't know that in California we need to create a whole new office, but I do think there's certainly opportunity for, say, a working group across the agencies on technology and innovation and what more we can do. And then the third core recommendation from that report was a public goods charge, which is not a new idea. It's been brought up before. It's even mentioned as a potential funding source in, again, the water plan that was just released from DWR. But there have been all kinds of concerns in the past about how a public goods charge could be structured so that it was equitable, and basically not taking money from over here to move it over there. So, it's an idea that's been around. It may have some potential for funding in the future, but there are a lot of challenges associated with that. So
yeah, I think folks look to it too because of the capacity in the energy field to be able to generate the dollars that have been part of the energy efficiency miracle we've seen in California over the last 30 years. So it's illogical.
right, it's easier on the energy side. There's one regulatory body and fewer people to collect it from. Speaking of the energy side, over the course of the summer, I worked with the Public Utilities Commission and representatives from the Office of Planning and Research, the Governor's Office, and the investor-owned utilities on what more they could be doing through their low-income programs, through their energy efficiency programs, on drought response. We just want to highlight PG&E, whose service territory includes a lot of the most drought-affected communities in the state, what they've done. So they've moved more people into the Central Valley to really do the outreach. They have upped the amount of devices, water-saving devices, that can be installed in communities through their contractors, and they've moved some more money from other unspent funds into this area. So want to recognize those efforts. And I think this is really a great illustration of the benefits of interagency collaboration. It took sort of a bunch of people sitting together in a room and trying to work this out.
That's great. Hey, what's a thermostatic shower valve? Is that one where you can say, I want it to be this temperature and it just goes to that temperature?
Yeah.
Oh man, I want one of those. I haven't seen those. Then you save all that water that you spend trying to get the right temperature. Clever.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's appreciated. Thanks for pointing it out, because I think this is where you have a limited capacity, human capacity to outreach, and it's probably for reaching this audience, it's more efficient to piggyback, for lack of a better term, on those existing efforts to do energy and water, and you certainly get a bang for the buck there on many counts. So thanks to PG&E for showing that leadership.
Yeah, it's great, and thanks to you for working with them to make it happen.
So looking ahead, we've got a few things coming up. One is we're going to be looking into establishing a statewide 1-800 number for reporting water waste. And this would be based on a model that's used at the Air Board to report smoking vehicles. And the idea would be that if someone witnesses water waste, they could call the number, or there would be a website to report it. And basically a letter would be generated that says, to the property owner, you're alleged, or, you may be violating, the regulations, or you may be wasting water, and here's some tips, and with a CC to the local water agency so that they can follow up. And again, the idea would be this would be a supplement, not a replacement to what is already going on at the local level. So we're going to be sort of moving forward on that over the next few months.
Yeah, I think there's a value in this, and it's not really just a tattletale and that sort of thing, but sometimes there's just there are larger institutional installations that are where there's a contracted landscape company or this, that, and the other thing, and so this can just be a helpful wake-up call to multifamily type installations or commercial, and it doesn't have to be a tattletale exercise. It's just continuous improvement.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, as I mentioned before, we're moving ahead on some of the small number of potential compliance cases. And then, just to mention that there's been some discussion of holding a December workshop in Southern California to focus on sort of some regional efforts and next steps there. So
Great.
that's
Great.
our
What are some
presentation.
of the leading acronyms for the 1-800 number? So you have 1-800.
That there are all kinds of options. It sort of depends on what's available, right? I mean, you could have a 1-800 stop H2O.
Yeah.
That's 7 digits,
About
but the 1-800 no waste. If
1-800
you want-
water hog.
Right. Yeah.
Ooh.
That one.
So much for the kinder, gentler information touch.
It's a brainstorm
We
session.
we could open it up for suggestions.
Yeah.
I'm partial to 1-800 Gomberg, but
We could sort of name something a Gompert. We got to think about what a Gompert is, a unit of measure.
Well,
It's like a smoot.
Well, I have a few things. First of all, to thank you very much for following up on the request that I made about the 800 number. I really appreciate that. Would like to get some sense from you on time frame, and I'm sure you're going to be reporting back.
Yeah.
But I also know that you're going to be leaving, so just like to hear your thoughts on time frame. I know it's involved to set something like that up, but would like to have it in place well before next year.
yeah, I think the goal would be to have this in place before next summer, right? And I think that's an achievable goal. It's going to require collaboration across multiple units of the staff here, because it requires telecom and IT support. It requires language support. It requires outreach. So it's sort of a staffing. There are a bunch of pieces that have to come together, but I think it's doable.
And then also, thank you for following up on the water use efficiency, the technology side, behavioral efficiencies. And not that we don't want to pick winners and losers, but that technology, I think, is a real sleeper. A lot of people don't know about it. A lot of water districts don't know about it. And just wondering what more we can do to help get the word out on the whole, array of things, that the thermostatic valve, new technologies that are low cost that a lot of these districts may not be aware of, in addition to maybe providing information, assuming that the bond passes funding sources, available funding sources.
Yeah, well, there are a few options ranging from highly labor-intensive to less labor-intensive. Highly labor-intensive would be to put together a workshop specifically on technology. There's a lot of the work that goes into that. Less labor-intensive would be, again, putting something up on our website, just listing a whole lot of different options, and doing something. The federal government, I know US EPA does this. They have special links where if you're leaving their site, it says you are exiting US EPA. We're not responsible for any of the content beyond this. So there are some options. I think it's definitely worth thinking about what's the sort of appropriate level of information we can help get out versus how much effort it's going to take. And again, as Board Member Moore mentioned, it's also a matter of coordination with, the Water Board doesn't need to sort of do this on its own. We can work with DWR, we can work with CDFA, we can work with the Public Utilities Commission, Aqua, right, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was over here on next steps, compliance outreach. And this came up because I actually was home one day when my gardener was there, and I saw him hosing down the sidewalk. And after I had my heart attack, I talked to him about it, and he's from Mexico and speaks, he has limited skills in English. And I realized that there's this whole sector out there that maybe we're not getting through to, because he was truly completely unaware. And so that might just be that somehow he missed it, that perhaps there have been ads on, Spanish TV and radio, but just wondering what we can do, what more can we do on outreach to target specific sectors, non-native speakers, also utilizing the entertainment industry to our benefit for those who are very much followers of Hollywood. What can we do to get some key leaders in the entertainment industry to help us on messaging, so that it's not just the message from the state of California and Save Our Water H2O? What more can we do to branch out?
Well, so I think one thing is, if the bond passes, there will be more money, and I think the likelihood is some of that money may be able to be put towards, augmenting what we've already got on the, SaveOurWater.com website and outreach efforts. And I know there's been work done, and I think, DWR and Aqua can speak to this more cogently than I can about, trying to make sure that some of that outreach is done in language
Yeah, I believe it is,
to different population groups. So I think that, that's one area. I know, we did translate our emergency regulation into Spanish, and it's up on our website in Spanish, and I do believe there was Spanish language media coverage of sort of what's been going on in water conservation. But again, there's always more we can do. I think, you may want to work with, it's our Office of Public Participation to figure out what more we can do specifically
I think
within
it'd be
our
hard for us to
outreach.
take it on. I think the issue is to augment the small Save Our Water budget and staff, because you want to be focused. Frankly, the preponderance, I would say the vast majority of outreach is done through local agencies. We're never going to be able to replicate that. We could if we had millions and millions of dollars, which we should, but we don't. But your points are correct, but I think the Save Our Water folks, we're trying to get there. When Dave Boland comes up to speak, he can talk a bit about the joint effort. You're right. But
And
I just don't want us duplicating a whole nother unit.
Yeah. And as to your question about Hollywood involvement, it would be great to have more of it. I'm not exactly sure how we would go about doing that, but
Save Our Water got quite a few, but they could use more.
right.
Thank you.
Anything? Just thank you guys. You've all done, and Eric, wherever Eric is, Eric, you all, the whole team, have done a great job, and I know it's been a tremendous amount of work, and it's actually really an honor to work with you guys. You're very good, and appreciate the hard work in getting these numbers out. I really think that this report will give the public and agencies, the media, a much more balanced, isn't the word I mean, but a useful view of what's possible. Again, not rushing to judgment, but it certainly opens some questions, and I think the transparency of it also should lead some water agencies and residents to wonder why their communities aren't doing more, and think about how they could do what some of these other communities have done without while maintaining a very attractive and beautiful municipal environment. You can do it with a lot less water than we do.
Absolutely.
The drought's not over just because it rained, and we don't know. I mean, I think we have to plan for the worst and hope for the best, but every drop counts. So thank you for this info. This, I think, this will yield and leverage a lot in the future. All right, thanks. We'll take a 15-minute break and come back at 25 of 11.
Oh, you have Dave Boland.
Oh, Dave Boland, I'm sorry. Of course, Dave Boland. We won't take a break until after Dave Boland. Do we have any other cards? It's just Dave?
I'll make it really short and sweet.
No,
Great.
it's important. Take
Sorry
your
about
time.
that.
David Boland with the Association of California Water Agencies. I appreciated all the the opportunities to hook up with the conversation that was going on here. I've got all kinds of notes. I'll just cut to the chase. We're looking at really positive trends. We're pretty positive about the response that water agencies have given, in terms of the gallons per capita per day. We appreciate the caveats piece on the website about how this should be used. Appreciated the comment about the idea of internal benchmarking. And we really want to emphasize the idea that gallons per capita per day, because of all these caveats and because of the way it's calculated, it's most useful for agencies to look at their own kind of performance through time. The fact that we've got this monthly data now is somewhat, I guess, dangerous for us, because we will potentially try to noodle around and micromanage a little bit. Why was September different than August, and what was September 13 like versus 14? And that's all very interesting stuff. And I'm sure that in time to come, some graduate students will be able to do some awesome research on the drought and the response to the drought and all the ways in which it affected different parts of the state. One of the things that keeps coming up is the complexity of our state, the fact that we've got an extremely geographically complex, politically complex, and then, of course, organizationally complex state. And the fact that there are different operators in different spheres, lots of messaging challenges. The idea that Australia got down to 45 in some place, somewhere, somehow, that's probably just interior water use. That's probably not a legitimate target.
It's both.
Well, they probably had no landscaping, basically, at that stage. When you get down to 45, and you're looking at relatively short showers and all the technology that can come with reduced water use inside, you really do have to be looking at very significant changes in outdoor landscaping. And that's going to be a big social commitment through time. So that's one thing I just want to underscore there. We're moving that direction. Again, I've talked before when I've been before the board, and I know it resonates, the idea that we're both on an immediate response to the drought track, but we're also on a long-term response to how we use water in California track. And the landscaping part kind of is a transition between the two. The idea that we're going to see some responses on these turf replacement projects through time, maybe even next summer, hopefully we'll start seeing the effects of some of those programs. They're extremely expensive. They need to occur. We need to continue to invest in them. But this is a longer haul response that we're likely to see. The public goods charge, we're really, I have to underscore the fact that the water agencies are extremely opposed to the idea of a public goods charge. There's a pretty good discussion in the water plan about it. It is listed among all the different ways in which we finance water in California as a possible way. We work with the department, in the finance task force there to try to articulate the policy landscape there as it relates to public goods charge. And I think that discussion is a fair one. It's not being promoted by the department in the water plan, and we're glad for that, because we think it's an idea that doesn't necessarily have traction, can't have traction in the water industry. It's different than the electricity industry, and we've given the reasons for that, and we think they're pretty well represented in that discussion. We do think that there are some opportunities for alliances with different industries, particularly the green industry. Lots of opportunity there. You got at the Spanish language issue, and there are also some cultural issues in the green industry in terms of what their job is. They get hired to make things pretty and green. Then we've got the commercial sector, the idea that, again, they want to be attractive. And so there's going to be a period here in which we can kind of anticipate working with these different industries to help nuance the messaging about how you can continue to have attractive landscaping without necessarily the higher water use. But through time, it'll be costly in terms of reinvestments and recalibration of our irrigation systems and so forth.
You're saying it's a marathon and a sprint.
Exactly. I've said that a few times, and it's a weird thing, because if you're a runner at all, you go, nah, it's got to be one or the other. I mean, you can't do both, right? You got to pace yourself one way or the other, and so it's not really a helpful image in that way. Don't take it too far. But the idea is, we're on these dual tracks at the same time. Aqua has a trade show. The Association of California Water Agencies meets twice a year, and in our conferences, we get a lot of water policy folks to talk about high-level policy stuff. But we also have a trade show in which people bring widgets, pumps and controllers and technologies. And so there's an opportunity to maybe make that a more robust opportunity for folks to show these new technologies off. And that luckily the folks that they're targeting there are the decision makers on the boards of directors of these water agencies. So it's a great opportunity there, and we'll continue to promote it. Save Our Water, there is a Spanish language Save Our Water site. Again, we're talking to consumers generally, but then there's this idea that we have the professionals, and they're making decisions sometimes about how landscaping gets done. And so there is an opportunity for nuancing that message, I think, in Save Our Water, as well as using more money in Save Our Water. And then the Conan parody of the State Water Board, I just had to say, you're talking about Hollywood. Conan's already helped us there, and he did a great parody of the State Water Resources Control Board. So few people know about this agency, and so the joke actually was the way he said it. He actually said it right, and yet, the delivery is part of the fun. So I would encourage folks, if they're interested in a Hollywood approach to the messaging on the drought in California, and that they want to see a parody, that there's a link there on the Save Our Water site, and that we've gotten a lot of great Hollywood interest in this, and so there's an opportunity maybe to start, I guess, targeting different submarkets and see if we could find a Spanish-speaking Conan in whatever sector there, and see if we can get some visibility that way as well. So we look forward to continuing to work with Water Board on this effort. Again, we're calibrating now on the messaging for winter, which is that you don't need to irrigate nearly as much. Shut your controllers off. Get your rain sensors going. And then this idea that just because we got a little rain doesn't mean we're out of the drought. So this is a slightly shifting the message to Californians about conservation, but that we're continuing to stay the course here, and we're looking forward to continuing to partner with the staff and the board to make sure Californians understand that this is a big commitment that we're making here, and that it's paying off.
Thank you. Thanks for everything you all have done, and not just on Save Our Water in general, but also your incredibly good suggestions to us, both on caveats and other things.
Oh, I have one more suggestion I forgot to mention. You'd mentioned the idea of some kind of cross-cutting organizational structure for the state, since we'd have kind of a disparate approach to governance. One tool that I've used and seen working is the Water Quality Monitoring Council, and the fact that there's lots of water quality action in different state government agencies, and that group got together and kind of tried to leverage that from a policy perspective, trying to speak with one voice and look at ways for efficiency on monitoring and so forth. And there might be a parallel possibility with water use and water use efficiency. I'm just throwing that out there. I hope I don't get home and get strung up for that option or that opportunity, because I'm not entirely sure that's the right tool, but there is this opportunity, I think, to get different departments and different parts of state government working with the local governments on this issue.
Great.
Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you very, very much. All right. Thanks all. And we will now take a break until around 11:15. Thanks.
because it's out there. You know, we're going to be entering into half SR for seeding, getting rid of the swamp data in the future. Seeding will be doing a full business analysis, looking at all types of information that should be going to seedlers, starting and designing it properly. It never was designed. Yeah, no, I know. It was built. We tried these regional data centers, never worked. So we're really thinking about simplify, simple templates, so much more consistent. I'm excited about getting head on that. There's so many things. Then if the data's there and available, then it can be used. So we need to work. Yeah. So I just want to let you know we're going to be starting that process. So that's good. And eventually, the swamp data is world up there. It's funny, you know. So we have to do it right. Yeah, it serves a purpose, but we'll be doing it right. You know, like the data's a bad. It's just, well, they were there. It's just not. I wish it would I mean, it is a significant source of hand because it's in the observation during the growing season. Watching in my office. We've started a lesson. Way to go. Great conserve water. Presenting.
Yeah. We're back. Sorry, we're a little bit late. Thank you for that. Next, Mr. Howard, item number 7, the fiscal year 2013-14 annual performance report. Go through the lunch hour. Oh, we'll go through the lunch hour. I think we'll be able to be done by 1 or so. So we'll keep going. Those of you who are worried we're going to keep taking breaks, we're not.
Morning, Chair Marcus, board members Diadamo and more. I'm Eric Oppenheimer, and with me today is Rafael Maestu. We're with the Office of Research Planning and Performance. This is the presentation of our annual performance report for fiscal year 13-14. Just trying to get this. There we go. Oop. Okay, so sorry about that. The performance report is our web-based annual report that's organized around key water board functional areas. And the report essentially documents our work over the course of the year. It tracks our performance in terms of meeting targets that we set at the beginning of the year, how we do throughout the year, and at the end of the year for percentage targets that are met. And to an increasing extent, it also illustrates the effect of our work on actual water quality improvement, water quality outcomes, and environmental improvements. It has multiple purposes, both internally as a planning and tracking tool and externally as a communication tool. And one goal of the report is to provide for increased transparency and accountability to our stakeholders, ranging from people we regulate, our fee payers, environmental groups, the public at large, legislatures, and really anyone interested in how we use our resources and what we do with those resources. It's also a systematic tool for using information to set priorities, establish workload standards that we're going to achieve through our organizations, and to evaluate our efficiency. And in doing this in such a public and transparent way, part of the goal is to increase public confidence in what we do and hopefully build support for our work here at the water boards. Some key points about this year's report. It is the 6th year the report's been in production, so it's starting to mature. We're getting better at using the report, setting it up, establishing targets, following through on those targets, that type of thing. And it really is still, the water boards are really still a leader in state government in terms of performance reporting. One of the things you do when you set out to develop a report like this is you kind of look around to see what other people are doing and look for models and follow, good ideas out there. Well, in the case of performance reporting, the water board really is ahead of the pack. We really are the model, and there's no one else out there that we've been able to find in terms of other state agencies that are reporting information to the scope of what we're reporting on as many of our programs and as much of the work we do, as well as the high degree of transparency that we have in this report. And it really is a work in progress. I feel like it will always be a work in progress. It's continuing to evolve and improve. It's quite comprehensive. There's some statistics up there. We've got over 200 report cards, over 800 individual performance measures, and that's all based on more than 24,000 data points. And that's good in that it measures us in a comprehensive way, but it's also a challenge. There's sort of a trade-off here between having information that's focused on key performance indicators and key measures of success and reporting on everything we do. We obviously don't want to report on everything we do. We want to focus on what's important. At the same time, we often hear from a lot of our internal stakeholders, the regional boards and the divisions and offices, that you're not measuring all our work. We want all our work to be accounted for. So there's this sort of struggle that we need to balance between breadth and scope and really focusing on what's important. I mentioned up there on the bullet point that the report's developed internally. That's important because the process is really important. It's not the type of thing where you could hire a consultant to come in and develop a performance report for your agency or organization, but I don't think it would be nearly as valuable. And then lastly, there's just been a lot of interest in the performance report, and you can see through 20,000 unique web site visitors that people are looking at it and paying attention to it. So changes for the fiscal year 13-14, we've completely redesigned the target pages in the reports, essentially to make them simpler and easier to view. Frankly, they have less information on them, but they are simpler and more streamlined. And they also do something important in that they connect text that the organizations that we're reporting on can provide about reasons for why they may have not met a target or perhaps even overshot a target by 100, 200%. They can provide an explanation as to why that occurred, and they could always do that in the past. It just wasn't as closely connected to the actual results on the page. We also continue to expand the TMDL, or water quality outcome cards. We've added 23 new ones this year, and that brings the total to 83 water quality outcome cards. We'll continue to build on that moving forward. But in terms of the changes for this year, frankly, there weren't really a lot of publicly facing changes besides the two that I just mentioned. We did do a lot of work in the background, though, to improve the report, sort of the back end of all of this. One, we created new reporting tools for internal use where now regional board staff and state board staff can easily go into a report, click on the results, and see the same data in a real-time basis that we use to populate the report, so they can track their work throughout the year, and it's more closely aligned what we're counting with what they're seeing. It's helped in a number of ways. They can see where they are throughout the year, like I just mentioned. It's also helped with data reliability and data, how good the data is, essentially, because oftentimes in the past we were missing work that was being completed because there were just data entry problems, but now that's immediately apparent. They can see it almost, there's like a 24-hour refresh rate on the data, but it's almost real time. And then we've also worked quite a bit with the regional board management, what's called the DMC, which are the AEOs from all of the regional boards, and then the assistant deputy directors from state board, to really take a hard look at some of the long-standing concerns that the staff essentially have had with how we count our results and how we present the results. And we've made a number of changes to respond to those concerns, and we'll also continue to do that. So for the results, this slide shows the results for fiscal year 13-14 compared to fiscal year 12-13, so basically the last report year versus the year before that. And it shows it in 3 different categories: for inspection targets, permitting targets, and then all other targets. And all other targets are essentially enforcement targets, planning targets, like how many TMDLs we do and how many basin plan amendments we get done in a year, and then site cleanup and underground storage tank, like closure projections, those types of targets, just so you have an idea of what those are.